I'm Beth Pickens. I'm a Capricorn, and I live in Los Angeles.
I'm Shelby Gonzalez. I'm a Sagittarius, and I too live here in Los Angeles.
Love a fire sign. So Shelby, what do you do?
So I am the Chief Executive Officer of Inner City Arts. I consider myself an artist and an educator and sort of an advocate for the arts for this city as a whole. What about you, Beth? What do you do?
I am an arts consultant. I write books and I consult with artists to help them figure out their lives and careers.
And how did you get to this place that you currently are in consulting artists?
Well, my whole life I love artists. I am not an artist, but I love artists. They're the most important people in the world to me. And I went to graduate school to become a therapist, but what I really wanted to do was work in the arts and with artists. So after grad school, I started working in the arts, and then I created this consulting practice that integrates all of my experience working in the arts in different capacities with my counseling background. So I could help artists sort of navigate the world, being the people they are, making their work.
That's beautiful.
How did you come to be an arts leader?
So I come from a family of educators, and I think that my kind of melding of the two worlds, I grew up, having a creative outlet. I didn't always consider myself a dancer, but as I got older, I identified as a dancer and a choreographer. But having parents that are educators, and my father is a filmmaker, it just kind of naturally happened that I went into education, but through a dance lens, and that was the first part, and it just evolved into always being involved in nonprofit organizations, whether I was a teaching artist, and then my knees start to hurt more, so I wanted to teach less, but what else could I do within nonprofits? And I've just been able to grow as an individual in the arts and in this sector, and I just love it because I get to be surrounded by other creative people, and it feeds my own creativity. So I love that I get to have a balance of my own creative practice while still leading an organization or taking I just feel like I'm a matchmaker of folks, whether it's a program to young people or an experience in a cultural institution to individuals. I just want to always connect those pieces. So Beth, what were you like in high school?
I was depressed and alienated. It was the 90s. There was no internet. It was very early internet stages. I was queer but didn't have the language for it. There were no gay people where I grew up. I was right outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and it was just depressing. But a really cool thing happened when I was 15. The Andy Warhol Museum opened in downtown Pittsburgh. And Andy Warhol is from Pittsburgh. And this museum opened, and I had a neighbor who was a high school arts teacher. And so she and I would make art together. And she took me to the opening of this museum. It was a midnight opening. And so she picked me up at 11 p.m. and we went to the opening of this museum, and it was filled with people like John Waters and all the local drag queens and all of these people that I was just who are these people? Where have they been? And I knew in that moment, I just had to get out of high school and get out of there and go find my people. So that moment was just this very pivotal thing where I realized I just needed to go find the artists that I identified with and go be with them. And that's what I did. I mean, I just sort of bided my time to get out of my hometown. Mm-hmm. And then I moved far, far away for college and found, feminism and queer studies and all of these things that helped shape who I would become. And it wasn't until after I went to college and finished grad school, I finally moved to San Francisco because I wanted to go be in a big queer city where all the artists and writers who'd been making the art that I love so much, where they were actually living and working. And so I moved out there so I could be in a huge queer creative community.
And how long did you spend in San Francisco?
I was there for 7 years before I moved down here to Los Angeles.
Wonderful.
Yeah. What were you like in high school?
So in high school, I feel like there was a really interesting time that happened. So I grew up here in Los Angeles. I went to a small high school, and I don't know, it was my sophomore year. I remember that I started to feel really alienated. You start to look around and your own self-awareness, okay, I'm at a school, there's not a lot of other Black students, there's a small amount of us. I wasn't like identifying as an artist yet. I was definitely more, everyone knew me as an athlete. I actually grew up since I was 5 in the martial arts doing Taekwondo, and it kind of took me, I was competing a lot. I became doing my own thing, because it's not like the school had a Taekwondo team. So, I would go off to practice, and I was actually teaching Taekwondo as well. So I had an after-school job teaching, and I say this all because I think I learned at an early age that I could be alone and be, like, I was friends with everyone, but it was like I didn't have a clique, and I did realize I didn't need that. And I think that's one lesson that I've actually really appreciated. Even though at the time it felt a little isolating, and I wanted to be with everyone, but I was like, I got things I got to do. I got to stay on my track. And I bring that up because I think it really framed just, you go after what you love, right? And sometimes it's a lonely road, but you're going to intersect with others. And so I'm really glad that I learned that lesson really young, because it kind of just made me, then when I got into college, and I actually just stumbled into a dance class. And I had taken dance classes as a kid just for fun. And so I stumbled into this dance class, and it was like that moment where my mind was blown. I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. And looking back, it links to, I remember going to the Amundsen, the music center, I don't know, when I was really young, and I saw Phantom of the Opera, and we sat right where the chandelier drops. And then this big production happened. I was like, I don't know what this is, but I want to be like this. Like, life should be this big. Yeah, so I think it just fed that. So through high school, and doing the martial arts, it kind of makes you fearless. Like, I knew I could walk down the street and literally kick anybody's butt. Mm-hmm. That gives you a little confidence. So yeah, so it was like kind of figuring it all out. Yeah, but that first year at college and that dance class, and I was like, this is what I want to do. Mm-hmm. I love being athletic and performing, but I think I found my niche.
Oh, that's incredible.
And it's nice when you find that, and then it makes the work that much easier, because you're working towards something. So I think for high school students, a very common question is, how am I going to make a living if I enter the arts? And so I really like to remind students that following your creative path is a great place to start, because it gives you a guideline, right? A pathway to collect all these skills, right? I constantly tell students, you're putting all these tools in your toolbox. You don't know what the destination is, but the more tools that you have, the more options you have after that. So whether you're driven towards visual arts or media arts or performance arts, right? It's really about exposing yourself to as much as possible, and like a buffet, taking what you like, and some things aren't always going to work, but that's going to then lead into the next thing, which will then lead into the next. There is no success without failure. So you're not going to get every job, right? And you're going to learn from those experiences, but really it's building yourself. It's a constant building of who you are as a person, and that also then leads into job and work and career. But really start with what it is that you want to hold on to. It's like, it's literally like this motion of like feeding your soul. And then on a very practical side for our high school students, I tell them you got to try it. You're not going to like every job. I've had many jobs, that like I didn't do them well, and nor did I like them. But I learned a lot from every part of that process, right? And every little moment in that journey just only makes you who you are today. And you'll be someone different next week, and you'll be someone different in a year, but it's building on that. And you gotta put in work. Like, artists know how to hustle and piece together what makes your living and how you want to live. So there's a freedom in that, but there's also a cautious responsibility to it.
I think there's sort of an artist quadratic formula, which is my creative practice, my art, plus making a living equals question mark. And that's true for a teenager, for a student who's graduating college who's an artist, all the way to my clients who are in their 50s and 60s. It's actually just a question. It's a formula that gets worked out and reworked out over and over again. And so my sort of foundational belief about artists is what makes artists distinct from me and the rest of the world who aren't artists is that artists have to make their work in order to have a good life. That for an artist, their creative practice is how they process being alive, how they understand themselves, how they communicate, and those are foundational things that will yield everything else. And so I tell my clients and my students who are graduating from art school that no matter what, you have to make your work. You have to have a creative practice. That may be attached to how you're making money. It might not be attached to how you're making money, and neither is good or bad. I know tons of artists who make none of their money from their art. They make their money doing day jobs that are all kinds of different things. Then I have some clients who they use their creative skills in other jobs, and then they have their practice that they're doing outside of their work. And then I have clients who are making all or most of their income from their creative practice. So it's this continuum. And that continuum can shift for an artist throughout their life, how they're making money and through what means. And so the first thing I sort of like to help unplug the belief that in order to be an artist, I have to be making money from it. Because then once we take the pressure off of that, we can actually look for what are opportunities through all the skills that you were referring to, all the skills an artist gains through making their work that can lead to all kinds of jobs. Because creative people are central to so many sectors. Creative people and artists do so many different kinds of jobs. And often as we're growing up, we have very limited understandings of possible careers. Usually we can name the kind of jobs that exist in like less than 50, but there's thousands and thousands and thousands of kinds of jobs. So for the artists who are leaving college, I'll often ask them to think about making a list of people who have lives that they want, who are living and working in a way that this person wishes to have too. Because it's really interesting to trace a person's career to find out how did they get to where they were, just like you and me. We didn't start off in high school thinking, someday we're going to be having these particular jobs and having this kind of life.
Right.
I mean, I didn't know what I was going to do. I wanted to like teach or something. I didn't even know what that meant, you know. And actually career paths are very meandering and full of unplanned happenstance. So for all artists, regardless of age, I always say your creative practice is a foundation that everything will get built on top of, including earning money. And they don't have to have a causal relationship, but they can have a very interconnected relationship.
I think that's a beautiful reminder that identifying the title and then like associating it with money, that makes you an artist. And it's like you are an artist and the money is going to come, right? Because we are all going to make a living. But yeah, like just knowing that from the get-go, like who you are and how you navigate through the world is just as important, or I think even more important than where the paycheck is coming from. Right? Yeah. So a good reminder I have not only for myself as a 43-year-old woman, but for our students is it's okay to fail. Because you've got to take that chance. You've got to have creative risks. I think what I do as an arts educator and leader is make the space for people to take those risks, where the consequences aren't going to be fatal, right? But we always want to make space that you can take those risks. And another, demystify the fact that like with every good idea, and this is for my own work, I think there's probably 10 really bad ones, I can look back at some of the work I've made, I'm like, man, I hate that piece, or I hate that costume, and you can go and nitpick it, but you gotta try it because it's gonna only build on the next thing, right? It's always building on what you've already done. So don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to try something. Don't let the what if hold you back from attempting something. That is the biggest lesson I think anyone could take away, especially at a young age. Like just go for it. What's the worst that can happen is it doesn't work out.
I think that's so right. With all of my artist clients, I find that they have to make the thing no matter what it was in order to get to the next thing. It's sort of like in writing books, I've learned that you write one book and it teaches you how to write the next book. And that one can't happen until this first one is done.
Yeah.
So it's like all of the work that an artist might feel like, well, I don't like that stuff, my old stuff, but it helped you get to where you are now. And you can't get to that piece until you've made this piece because it's instructing you and teaching you. But yeah, so we have such fear of failure, a fear of not doing something right or perfect on the first try. And when we're looking at art and music and film and reading books, what we're seeing is the end result of something. We're not seeing all of the years of work that went into the thing. So I think artists, we have to give them constant like permission and freedom, like just keep trying. That's how you find your voice, and that's how you figure out what it is you're doing, is just by trying things and sort of tossing them out and deciding what to keep and what to discard along the way.
Yes, I completely agree.
I say a lot that artists are the most important people to me. They're my favorite people. Artists and the work they make the world like possible to live in and understand. And artists make the world a place that people then maybe want to belong to more. And so for any person who's like thinking about their relationship to being an artist or being in art worlds, there are so many. And I think that art is a place that everybody belongs in because that's where all of our stories get to get told. And our stories are vital. Every single person's experience, observations, ways of seeing the world, ways of being, those can get communicated through art. And that's why I'm alive. Like, I just want all of those experiences. So every day at my job, I get to just talk to artists about their lives and help them figure out how to keep making their work and how to help it be in the world. And to me, that's my professional creative life's purpose, is to help as many artists as possible make their work and be in the world, because then they go on to impact the world so enormously. They touch every part of the world. And for any person who has sort of this creative instinct inside of them and they think, I'm drawn to this, but I don't know how, or I don't know where I belong, I would just say to that person, you belong already, you don't even know it. Like you're in it, we're just gonna help you figure out how to be in it. But living in Los Angeles, for example, this is a city packed densely with artists and creative people working in so many different ways. And so anytime a person is curious about someone's work, I always want to encourage them, ask that person, especially for a young person, especially like a teenager, a person in their early 20s. You would find that so many people are willing to open up and tell you, this is what I do and how I got here. I will make transparent that process. And so follow your instinct of curiosity to find out, like, well, what's possible for me? Where can I be? Because as soon as you ask that question, you don't realize it, but you already belong. You're already part of this fabric of artists. And we just want to pull you in even more.
Yeah, I love that. You brought up a really interesting point, which I love, is this, like, the creative process, right? And that we're all a part of it. And I think that's what the arts does, is it sets folks up to go on this journey. It's a way of seeing the world, seeing yourself in the world, and the relationship of the two. And it's ongoing and it's changing, but that's the beautiful thing, right? The creative thinkers, the creative makers are all on this journey, and we don't know that the answer is, but it's the journey that is so wonderful. I mean, I have to say, I'm thankful every morning that I wake up and it's like, the arts has really, I mean, it is who I am, it's how I identify, but I say all the time to folks, like, it's also how I parent, it's how my relationships with, you know, my family, or, you know, my partner, and like, it's all through the arts, just the lens that I use. And I invite anyone to try it. It's just a beautiful way to be your true self, your whole self, and kind of offer it out to the world.